Hello, and welcome to the Hildebrand Law Firm. Topic for today, I am attorney Matt Kaplan.
I'm attorney Derek Darren.
Yeah, and you'll notice that Derek is in Kirsten's typical spot. Derek, why is that the case today?
Yeah, I think Kirsten is off attending some sort of a Pride Festival or maybe the Daytona 500. I don't think we're quite sure, but I'm here today.
I always get those two confused. So I'm really happy that you're here because we are going to talk about the wild, wonderful world of probate. Derek here is a partner at Hildebrand Law Firm, and he has many, many years of expertise. I actually know very little about Derek. He's a man of very few words, but the words that he does speak are pretty awesome. So the idea of this video is we're going to talk about probate, which is about a year-long process, or so it could be, and we're going to try to condense it down to about 10 minutes. So without further ado, let's get started. You're dead. Now what happens?
You're dead, now what happens? Well, the first thing I always tell people when they come to see me when someone passes away is that titling matters. And really what that means is at its basic terms, did you have a trust? Did you have bank accounts? Did you have cars? Did you have a house? And how are all of those things titled? And so the sort of starting analysis of whether you even need the probate in the first place is, well, did they have a trust? And was their house especially in the trust at the time that they passed? Most often, the people that obviously come through me are people who are not prepared, who don't have that trust either set up or properly funded. And so unfortunately then in the state of Wisconsin, when there are more than $50,000 that get caught outside of a trust and are still titled in the sole name of the individual, then we have to start a probate.
Okay, can you just give me, I guess, a brief rundown of why is probate a thing? Why do we even have to do probates? I guess, if my father has an account with a bank, why don't they just write me a check for all the money in that account? Why does it have to go through a probate first?
So obviously the bank isn't going to just take your word for it. For many Joe Schmo off the street, for example, Matt Kaplan goes into the bank and says, I'm the son of so-and-so, please write me a check for his amount. The probate procedure is a formal court procedure administered by the circuit court of whatever county the individual passed away in. It tends to be fairly formal, even though what I'll plan on talking about mostly today is called informal probate. Even though it is informal, it still tends to be fairly formal. And what that means is that the register in probate, the folks who are tasked with overseeing all of these probate cases, will do exactly that. They'll oversee the administration of the estate. Someone will be appointed what's called the personal representative. Some of you may have heard in the past or in other states the term executor thrown about. That's the same thing in Wisconsin as the personal representative. And unfortunately, what probate is it's a court overseen process where all of your assets are then collected by your personal representative with the oversight of the probate court and ultimately used to pay any debts. And if there is money left over at the end, paid out to the beneficiaries.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So we're going to sprint in the next 2 minutes, probate process from start to finish. Go.
The first 8 or 9 documents are essentially your opening documents. You establish your heirship amongst the heirs. You determine who needs to be given notice. You determine whether or not there's a will, and that guides a lot of the opening process. In Wisconsin, especially lately, most counties are now requiring bonds. And what that is that's an insurance policy that can cost upwards of a few hundred to a few $1,000s for the personal representative to buy. That way, if the personal representative would run off with the funds or mismanage the funds in any way, the beneficiaries can be made whole through that bond. So usually the first month or so of the process is just getting those formalities in place, and we don't even start the clock of our 1-year period really until those formalities are fulfilled. Depending on whether there's a will or not, sometimes you need formal probate, but at least for today, I'll talk about informal probate. Once you have your appointment completed, once you have a bond approved by a bond company and filed with the court, the Register and Probate issues what are called domiciliary letters, which is the document that essentially proves to the world that you are appointed as the personal representative, that you have authority to, for example, go to the bank and say, cut me a check for dad's account or whoever's account it might be. And that document then is signed by the court and can be used, again, essentially to contact all third parties and let them know.
So let me ask you a quick question. So from the time someone dies to the time domiciliary letters are granted, usually as long as people are acting promptly, usually about how much time is that in real life?
And it does depend quite a bit on the circumstances of each case. If you have a case with 3 or 4 heirs, maybe not all the heirs see eye to eye. There are essentially 2 ways to start an informal probate. If you have a will and you have heirs who do not agree, you could ask that the will be admitted and set it on what's called notice, which at a minimum depends on the court's calendar, but is usually around 45 days of delay. So even after you complete those initial documents we discussed, again, I would assume about a month or so to do that after someone's passing at the very earliest. Then you're waiting another 45 days for the appointment. In theory, if everyone does agree, you could have that appointment completed within the first 30 to 40 days.
Okay, and then all the while though that account is totally frozen.
Correct. That
Okay.
account is totally frozen. Funeral costs are not being paid. Property taxes are not being paid for those who own property. Yeah, it can be a difficult situation for people who need access to funds right away, which is why we generally recommend trusts, because trusts don't have that delay or lag.
Okay, so then the domiciliary letters are given, the personal representative is appointed, and they can take whatever property is in the name of the decedent. Now what happens?
So once they've collected all the property, we also publish notice to creditors. And so when we talk about our year-long probate, I always tell folks the minimum it can possibly take in the best case scenario is between 3 and 4 months. That is a statutory period that is set to give creditors notice of a deadline to file claims. That's published in the local newspaper. In my experience, creditors do very well to find out when someone's passed away and will file claims against the estate. It's then up to the personal representative to determine if those claims are legitimate, if they should be paid. And certainly it can lead to contested litigation in cases where those claims are contested. Beyond that process, most counties require an inventory to be filed within 6 months. And so again, going back to our year-long time frame, that inventory is sort of the middle point where the inventory establishes, okay, you've been personal representative now for a few months. What did you find out about the person's assets? And so you actually file in the probate court, open to the world or anybody who knows enough about how to use court records to see it. You file a list of all assets subject to probate, and so anybody that's out there knows what's going on in this estate. Beyond that, then you handle all of those things that I had mentioned, payment of creditor claims. Oftentimes there involves a sale of real estate, which takes a little bit of time as well. Most counties require the probate to be closed within about 12 months. It does differ greatly by county. Some are as short as 6, some are as long as 18 months, but generally speaking, you can expect an average of about a year for a probate.
Okay, and so that whole process that you just described, about an average a year for probate. So then um, after they pay the creditors and everything like that, then they can distribute the money to the beneficiaries and call it a day.
Correct.
Okay.
Assuming everything's been done, you do have to file taxes as well. Make sure that there are no past taxes owed both by the deceased individual and by the deceased individual's estate in the cases where certain property is sold, which might result in a taxable benefit. But yeah, I think once all of your creditors are paid, once all of your debts are paid, you do what's called a final estate account, which takes the number that you were provided in the inventory and it gives you a penny by penny accounting of everything into the estate and everything out of the estate. And those tend to be pretty detailed because those are the documents then that the beneficiaries review and rely upon to determine if everything has been done correctly, if they have gotten their fair shake. And I've certainly seen more than one case where a beneficiary comes back later and says, well, I question this charge, I question that charge. And in some cases, it does lead to contested litigation as well, which obviously increases our time frame.
Okay. And in just like that, I think we hit that 10-minute mark. I think we may have beaten that. Derek, absolutely riveting testimony. I'm literally on the edge of my seat. Yeah, you make probate sound really fun. I can't wait to experience this with all of my friends and family later on in life.
Well, hopefully that's not the case, but thank
No.
you nonetheless for having me.
It sounds really crappy, and I hope none of you at home ever experience this. If you have gone through a probate, or if you have any probate stories, leave it down in the comments. I want to hear all of your probate stories, and also if you have any questions, leave it down in the comments. Derek will help answer any questions. Obviously, this is not legal advice; this is for entertainment purposes. We got to get those disclaimers out of the way. But also make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, share it with your friends, especially if you have any friends going through probate or thinking probate's not a big deal. My kids will be fine. Send them this video. Let them know that perhaps that's not the case. But until then, we may have a little few more videos with Derek in the future. So hopefully he sticks around. And just know at Hildebrand Law Firm, we're here to protect your today and your tomorrow. Thank you.